Welcome back to the 1973 Kawasaki F7 build series. In this episode, I'll be disassembling the engine all the way down to splitting the crankcases. First off, I'm going to start draining the transmission oil. Now I will be removing the cylinder head. If you plan on doing any engine work yourself, I highly recommend getting a good length breaker bar. Some of these bolts will be near impossible to remove without it. I also highly recommend, if you'll be working on a motorcycle, to wash the entire thing, including the engine, before you start any engine work. You don't want any dust, dirt, and grime flying around and getting in your engine while you're working. Now obviously I didn't do that here, I just wasn't thinking about it. And the engine was already pretty dirty on the inside, rust and mud, so I planned on cleaning the whole thing inside and out anyway. However, I definitely recommend cleaning the outside before you get into the inside. With the transmission oil pretty much drained and the cylinder head out of the way, I will be removing the oil injector pump. I had to take a break real fast to put something soft under my knees. If you're going to be working in your backyard because you don't have a shop like me, I definitely recommend getting a set of knee pads and keeping them somewhere where you can find them. With the oil injector pump now off, I will be removing the right side engine cover. It's usually best practice to keep track of where the bolts you're removing go. A little trick I learned later on was to sketch a rough outline of the engine case or engine cover on a piece of cardboard and poke holes where all the bolts go and store them there. I didn't do it till later on, but I recommend that that's something you do from the beginning. Next, I'll be removing the clutch pack. This is one of those parts that you'll just want to stack it the way that it's assembled and store it in a box till you need it again.
Go potty. No, go potty. Go potty. Hi, sweet pea. Go on, go potty.
If you are new to engines, you can see how this clutch is an alternating set of discs. And when you operate the clutch, these discs are either pulled apart or squeezed together, and that's how power is transferred from the engine to the transmission. Cars work in a similar principle, but their clutches are usually a little more complex. So what I'm prying with the screwdriver here, and you'll see me doing it later, is whoever last assembled this engine bent just about every washer that was holding in a large nut so that the nut wouldn't be able to move. So I had to unbend them in order to be able to unscrew them. And you can see up close just how bent that washer was, and they're all pretty similar. Now I'll just be removing all these various parts on this side of the engine. Some of them I don't even know the names from that I could tell you. I know what they do. They operate the transmission, they hold the carburetor, those sorts of things. I'll be removing as much as I need to split the crankcase and maybe a few extra parts just so I can clean everything up, inspect everything, and replace anything that needs to be replaced. If you don't have a flywheel holder, which you should get, I don't know why I don't have one yet, they're relatively inexpensive, but if you don't have one, sometimes you can get away with a strap wrench. Now this only works if both the strap wrench and the flywheel are not covered in oil. And welcome to Misusing Your Tools 101, where I will show you how to use channel locks and a screwdriver to unbend a washer. Even after all that, it's still pretty bent. And now you've advanced to misusing your tools 201, where I show you that just about anything with a flat surface can be used as a hammer. I will demonstrate this by using channel locks to flatten a washer. And if you're unfamiliar with these old dirt bikes, this is how a rotary valve works. It spins with the crankshaft to open the way for the gas to flow through the carburetor. Next day, gotta make that dog comfy. Big surprise for you, got another bent washer on that drive shaft. I mean, I guess that's a pretty ingenious way to hold nuts on if you didn't know the torque specs, but I wouldn't do it personally. Originally, I bought this harmonic balancer puller to help with splitting the crankcase. I was pleased to see that it was what I needed for the flywheel as well. That was tough. Tougher than I expected. Magnets really stick. Whew. That is not your typical stator. It's not your typical modern day stator, huh? Little 6-volt system. Little burned right there. So, these are the magnets that go around these coils on the stator. That's called the stator because it's stationary. And this is your flywheel, your magneto, some people call it. It's got strong magnets right here. And these are actually, they're glued down and pinned in, which is really good. Because on a lot of I had a 1996 Kawasaki Vulcan, I had to replace the flywheel because the magnets were just glued in. They would crack, they would come off, that would cause a big problem. So I had to replace it with a new one where they were encased in the flywheel. But somebody, if you can see, they slotted these. I'm assuming they had to replace them at some time. Hopefully that didn't mess up the balance of the wheel too much. I was having a lot of trouble. I couldn't get this off. Yesterday it was stuck on pretty good. So what I did is I sprayed some WD-40 down these holes and all around the base, all around there. And when I was just working that stator, I noticed it had come loose and it was very simple to work it off. So WD-40 or PB blast or any kind of penetrating oil will work for that. If you don't have an impact wrench like me and you don't want to strip out the screws, I recommend using a Phillips head bit on your ratchet. I've always had success with this, so let's see if that continues to happen. So here I roughly sketched the outline of the crankcase on a piece of cardboard and punched holes where all the bolts went so that I could transfer them over there and keep track of where they go. Get ready to cue the "that's not how you split a crankcase" comments, because it was about right now that I confirmed that harmonic balancer puller did not reach any bolt holes I could use to split the crankcase with it. A little bit of research told me I probably needed to get a crankcase tool. Feeling slightly disheartened that I wouldn't be able to split the crankcase today, I decided to move forward and remove the piston. I figured it would be a pretty easy job, but that thing was jammed on there, which is not what I was expecting. I don't know if that's how pistons normally are, but I just thought it would be kind of loose on that pin. Now, at this point, the responsible part of me said that since the piston was off, that was going to be it for the day. However, the impatient and air quotes macho part of me decided that I wanted to see just how strong that crankcase seal really was. So I started tapping around it with the mallet, and it moved a little bit, opened and made a little gap, and I figured I could probably tap it through with the mallet. However, that doesn't work if there is a pin in the way. I figure that pin was probably stuck there to keep idiots from me from doing stuff like this, but at the same time, there were built-in prying spots on this crankcase, so I'm not sure how concerned they were with using the proper tools. And I felt like teaching the first lesson in Misusing Your Tools 301, which is abuse your materials. But now I'm at this point where I feel slightly disillusioned by my unconventional success. However, I am proud to say I accomplished my goal of splitting the crankcase, and as you could probably tell, it's the first time I've ever gotten this deep into an engine. Previous to this, my experience is limited to cleaning carburetors and replacing a piston on a 150cc scooter. The question now is whether or not I will be able to replace the old parts, the gaskets, and get everything back together the right way. And I did order the Climber repair manual for this bike to ensure that I get everything done the proper way. Well, thanks for watching. Go ahead and like and subscribe if you want to. I will be having some future videos about mopeds, scooters, and other motorcycles. The purpose of this channel is for you to be able to see things that you want to do before you do them, so I can make the mistakes for you. So stick around for new videos at least every Friday, and leave your suggestions for me in the comments.